PSG just came away from Bilbao with a 0-0 draw, a result that feels frustrating in an otherwise entertaining night. The first half mostly belonged to Athletic, aggressive press, intensity, and real bite, and it looked like PSG were in for a difficult night. But as the game wore on, PSG grew into it, created the clearer chances, and should have found a breakthrough. Tonight's discussion isn't just about why the goals didn't come, it's about whether this is 2 points dropped or 1 point gained in a tricky away tie. Let's break it down. So, 0-0, Athletic Bilbao PSG. And first, I'll say it. I'll start with their way trickier games that we were anticipating. And I think it's fair to say that Athletic Bilbao really turned up the best performance of the season against us. And it's kind of something that is kind of the curse of PSG. We know it's also like the luck of the champion, but every team wants to make the most of playing against us. I was a bit worried about it, but I think, what we had seen before and what I had put in my preview, obviously, like, didn't really match up with the games that we saw. And in particular, the first half, where, Athletic Bilbao came out swinging, was really, really aggressive in terms of the pressing. Actually, like, the game started, like, the very first few minutes were mostly dominated by PSG. I think we get an early chance. I don't remember if it's Fabian Ruiz or Zaire Emery, but we do get an early shot on goal, and then progressively Bilbao really steps into it, really pushes forward, and tries to come at us with a high press. And I think, we missed a couple of things during that first half. During most of that first half, we missed a little bit of technical quality. I think there's a little bit of passing that didn't really work as well as usual. I think our midfield, Vitinha, Joao Neves, to a lesser extent Fabian Ruiz, didn't have the best games of their career. And I think, Zaire Emery on the right did very well, but obviously he's not Hakimi, and Nuno Mendes on the left was just coming back from injury, and so wasn't clearly at 100%. And so in terms of trying to move the ball out of defense, this really challenged us and impacted our ability to move the ball out of defense in the way that we usually want to. And so for most of the first half, we really struggled to find solutions. And it was, I think, like around the 35th minute, I would say, is when Bilbao drops but down a little bit. You can see as well that they're like clearly overextending themselves physically. And it's something that Luis Enrique actually like said that he told his players at halftime, which is that, they played that first half on a pace that they couldn't possibly sustain for 90 minutes. And so for us, like, I do believe, having rewatched the game at the end of that first half, we kind of like, we took it in stride. Sure, we're like not leading or anything, but we also didn't concede. We didn't concede a goal. And even like at the end of the first half, like, we didn't really concede that many Bilbao chances. And ultimately, like, the biggest chances in the first half are actually for PSG, and there's an opportunity that we have, I think, in Mayulu at the tail end of the first half, that very well could see us be 1-0 up at halftime, completely against run of play. But ultimately, that's also what great teams do. They manage to hold on, to not concede anything. And to do what they need to do to just carry on. And so I think like it's hard because you don't want to be dominated. And I think against a team like Atletico, not Atletico, against a team like Athletic, like, we knew that they have the players' quality. We knew that they have the intensity and that they have the tactical know-how with their coach to really be able to create that. And I think, given the atmosphere of the stadium, given like the identity thing and so on playing into it, all of those pieces come together, and yes, they can like really play above their capability for 30-35 minutes before like they have to drop back down. So kudos to PSG at this side to just, do what they need to do to not concede, clear the ball when we need to, try to move it back, try to move it forward, even if it doesn't really work. And yeah, like try to create opportunities on the few moments in that first half where we can. And as well, like for all of the intensity domination that Bilbao had in this first half, Nico Williams didn't really break through Warren Zaire-Emery. We did a bang-up job of holding him back on the right side. In central defense, Marquinhos picks up an injury, and I really think would have been worse of a yellow if not a red card for the Basque player. And you really have to question not only the referee but the VAR on this one, because obviously that would also completely change the game. And then on the left, Nuno Mendes, like I said, just coming back from injury, first game back, and clearly not 100%. Also doesn't really concede that much either. And Pacho is equal to himself as a decent game as well. Safonov in the goal does what he has to do, sometimes not in a very conventional fashion, but he does what he had to do, and ultimately doesn't have a lot to do, and that's the reality of it. And so all of that effort from the Bilbao team, honestly, I can imagine that Bilbao team coming back into their locker room at halftime, having played one half at 120% and really given it them their all to try to break us down. And literally, they don't really even have any major clear-cut goal opportunities to show for it. It must be super disheartening for them. And if they're already starting to feel the tiredness because they've played above their physical mean for a while, you go back to the locker room and you go damn, we didn't really manage anything, and we can't keep going at that pace for the next 45 minutes. So what's gonna happen to us? So yeah, and so that's really kind of the question at that point, and because going in the second half, all of a sudden the game switches, and I think PSG clearly takes the leadership in the game. We've got a great first 35 minutes of the second half where we clearly dominate, where we create clear-cut chances. Barcola has an amazing opportunities that he doesn't convert. Mayulu has one as well. Fabian Ruiz. So there's really chances for us, and more than that, we really take ownership of the possession. We move into their half, and all of a sudden we look like PSG again, controlling the game. One of the things that tactically I thought was interesting, I think switching. So at the beginning of the game, Kvara plays on the left and Barcola on the right, and actually switching those two actually helps us perform better. And I think Barcola on the left is a lot more impactful. And we'll talk about him in a second, but it's kind of a shame that he misses that opportunity, because I think in other places he did a lot of things right. And so it kind of tarnishes his game a little bit. Kvara on the right is not as impactful, but I think he's got enough quality to contribute still. And I think you see Warren Zaire-Emery really being able to slot into midfield a lot more than what he did in the first half, with Zabarni coming on for Marquinhos as well and moving into a more a usual three at the back kind of defense. And all of a sudden, we find a lot more balance and we find a lot more opportunities. And I think if you compare the first half, where Bilbao had a lot of density in the middle, and they're 4-2-3-1 organization turning into a 4-4-2, there was this block of 4 players in the middle of the pitch, but also a line of 4 in between our defense and Vitinha to do that high press. all of a sudden we managed to push them back and kind of run through them, and all of a sudden they don't have as many opportunities to block us. So tactically, we do a good job of adjusting, and yeah, we take ownership of the game and create opportunities. The last 10 minutes are a bit more balanced. Bilbao's come back again. The crowd comes to life, and so like help them finish strong. And so ultimately, like, yeah, hard to say 1.1 or 2 point lost, because like it does feel like 2 points lost, because I still think that we were the strongest team. And that if one of the two teams had to win, it should have been us. But at the same time, like, yeah, it's a team, Bilbao team that created trouble for us, that asked us questions that we managed to answer, but that really challenged us for a while. And yeah, like, ultimately, like, getting a point away in San Mamés in Bilbao, against a team that's playing at this level and this kind of crowd and so on, it's not a bad point either. I think that's where we also, like, we go back to the fact that we have a really, really hard list of fixtures for this group stage for the Champions League. And if you think that this is supposed to be one of our easy games, man, like, yeah, it did not look so easy. Like I said, I think we should have won that game maybe, like, but yeah, ultimately, like, the draw isn't completely undeserved and completely unwarranted either. In terms of players, so there's a few that I kind of want to spotlight and talk about. Barcola, like I said, he misses that big chance at the 60th minute when Kvara is also wide open in the middle. So he makes a bad decision of taking the shot instead of passing. And then, like, he shoots on the crossbar and doesn't convert. So first things first, on him, like, making the decision to shoot and not to pass, I've seen a lot of people criticizing him for that. And honestly, like, I can hear it, I guess, but also, like, the guy is a forward, and like game after game after game, we criticize him for not scoring. And like in this case, he's one-on-one against the keeper. He's like well within the area, with a clear chance of scoring. Yeah, man, you take your chance, you know. Like, also remember, like, I was thinking last year at the exact same time, literally all of the fans were complaining that Luis Enrique's PSG was playing this endless game of possession and knocking the ball around and not converting their chances. It's like, at some point, you want your attackers to take their shots. This one, unfortunately, it goes on the crossbar, and I think, like, you know, he could have done a better job at it, obviously. But I find it very hard to blame an attacker for taking a shot. I think ultimately, like, that's what he's here for. And also, like, yeah, he's probably, like, doesn't have all the confidence in the world right now. And so he sees an easy shooting position, he's going to take it. He's going to take it. Of course he will. I think anyone would do the same in his place. So that one I want to, like, kind of list out. And like I said, I think in the rest of the game, Barcola, and especially when he moves to the left side, becomes very incisive and creates a lot. I think, like, physically, actually, I thought he looked a lot sharper. So I don't know if, like, that little week of rest before last game actually did him good or something. But yeah, I thought his runs were sharper. I thought he was faster. I thought he looked more dynamic. So yeah, it's hard because I think, like, we're gonna focus on this miss because that was the biggest chance for PSG, and that would have made the difference between a draw and a win. But ultimately, not everything is to throw out when it comes to Barcola. And in the end, I also, like, completely buy into what I know a lot of people are saying, which is, like, he needs to be more clinical, he needs to improve, and he's not improving, and he's not scoring enough, and it's a problem. And yes, I kind of agree with this, but I think on this particular game, yeah, I mean, I remember, I think it was Aimé Jacquet, who was, like, the coach of the French teams that won the World Cup in '98, who used to say that, like, actually, I might be completely making it up, but I know someone said it. I don't remember who, but was saying that like the only thing you can ask of forwards essentially in football is to create chances, and then if it goes to the back of the net or not, there's an element of luck. There's the keepers. There's like split-second decisions. There's so many things that go into it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I think like this Barcola shot like really made me think of that. It's like, yeah, for like half a millimeter in how he takes his shot, all of a sudden it's not on the crossbar, it's at the back of the net because he's beaten the keeper, who otherwise had an amazing game as well. So yeah, that's kind of what it is. Then other player wanted to mention Warren Zaire-Emery, who really confirms that man oh man is back on top, and man oh man, like if there's anyone who still thinks we need to get a substitute for Hakimi, let me know in the comment. But yeah, like he's doing a bang up job of covering for Hakimi. Defensively, he completely took control of Nico Williams, who we know is not in the best phase of his career, but he's still a very gifted player and very talented player. But Warren Zaire-Emery, he also slotted into midfield in the second half and really contributed to building up our density in midfield, and even had a few runs forward all the way to the Bilbao area. I think he has one or two shots. I think it's the one at the very beginning is him, like the 3rd minute, which really could have been an early goal as well. So yeah, really, really good game for him. And yeah, I mean, he hasn't. Someone was saying, I think he's played like the last 16 or 17 games in a row as well. He's like basically a machine. He's not leaving the starting 11. He typically doesn't get substituted either. So yeah, like super impressive. And like, you know, come January when Hakimi comes back, I think obviously Hakimi gets his spot back because Hakimi is just in a different galaxy. But you know, it's gonna be really hard to push Warren Zaire-Emery out of the starting 11. And you know, a player like Joao Neves, who's an absolutely fantastic player, who I absolutely adore, like the games that he produces yesterday, I'd be a little bit worried, you know, like I'd be looking over my shoulder and going like, well, like, you know, that Warren Zaire-Emery, he could very much gun for my spot. I think we're still a long ways away, but yeah, it's good to see him like be competitive again and really like show what he can do. Always believed in him, I guess, like, you know, with the TTBS or whatever it is. But yeah, it's good to see him at that level. And then, like, shortly, the last one I wanted to mention as well, Safonov, because there's obviously like the recurring question of Chevalier versus Safonov, or just the recurring question of Chevalier. I think Safonov did well. Honestly, he had a decent game. He did what he had to do. I think in the end, he had relatively little to do. He didn't really have any very difficult save, like the one or two that he had against Rennes, who were looking a lot more impressive. I think in terms of distribution and passing, we didn't really see nothing crazy, nothing super exciting either. I think sometimes like technically is a little bit unconventional, and it does things in a way that's like, yeah, like sometimes like a little bit dodgy. He's got good control of his area, so he doesn't hesitate to direct his defense. So there's positives and stuff. I'm not like, I don't know, like, I'm not entirely sold because we've seen last year as well that he had his limits, and like we've seen it this year with the Russian team as well, that he can like also make errors, and sometimes like doesn't perform at the highest level. But I think for now, like at the very least, it's good to see that we can rely on him when Chevalier isn't available, and hopefully it's also gonna give like, maybe it gives Chevalier a little bit of an example of like some stuff that he can strive to. I think in the way of communicating with his defenders, there's really stuff for Chevalier to pick up on, and you know, in being like, I think like the mentality of like the guy hasn't played for all of the season, and just all of a sudden like he's got to play those 2 games, including a Champions League game in very hostile territory. I think the mentality that he showed and how prepared he's been and how like ready he's been for it, it's quite positive. And I think like there's stuff for Chevalier to take on board, and hopefully it gives him a little kick in the pants that he needs to start producing at a higher level. What's next for PSG? Our next Champions League game are in Jan. We're going to be going to Sporting Portugal, and then we're going to be playing at home against Newcastle. And I think for me, like that's really like the annoying part of this Bilbao game, is that it feels like sadly we've lost for good our spot in the top two of this Champions League group phase. I think Arsenal is like 6-4-6 now. They're 4 points ahead of us. They're not going to lose their next 2 games, so they're going to finish above us. And Bayern Munich, like I looked, their next 2 games are really easy as well. I mean, way easier than ours. So I don't think they drop points and allow themselves to be caught. And at the same time, we've got a bunch of teams like breathing down our neck as well. There's Man City is there, Atalanta is there, Real Madrid is there, Inter is still there, Liverpool is not far. So we're gonna have to get results in those last 2 games to really get our spot in the top 8. Ideally in the top 4, so we can, because like the classification is going to impact which team receives hosts return games in the knockout rounds. And so the higher up you finish, the better off you're going to be later on. So there is really like a clear impact of finishing 3rd or 4th instead of 5th or 6th. And so we do want to gear up for that. So yeah, we're gonna have to get results in those last 2 games, and they are not going to be easy. Both Sporting Portugal in Portugal, that's a tough matchup, and Newcastle at home, obviously, like we've seen it recently, it's a tough matchup as well. So we're going to have to gear up for that. And beyond that, outside of the Champions League, we've got Metz coming up this weekend, which is going to be good in Ligue 1. And then Flamengo has beaten Cruz Azul in the Intercontinental Cup. They're going to be facing Flamengo next. Flamengo is going to be facing Pyramids next in the semi-final. And the winner of that game will face us next Wednesday in Doha for the final of the Intercontinental Cup. So that's going to be a trophy to win in 1 week's time. And so you know, like for me, that's really the game that I've got my eyes on now, and that, you know, we're going to want to be winning. So anyway, this is what I had for you. Long debrief of this Bilbao game, 0-0. Yeah, like sadly, a little bit of an opportunity lost. A good game of football though, and a lot of things to take forward. So let me know in the comments what you made of this game, who you thought was man of the match. I expect a lot of comments about Barcola, and I know a few of you will probably have stuff to say about it. So let me know what you thought. And yeah, as always, please drop a like on the video if you made it this far. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notified. And don't forget, ici c'est pareil!